Hello art parents, welcome to December. So we have a fun artist this month and kind of interesting because the last couple of months we've been studying artists that have taken us into a more modern style of art, away from that really realistic looking naturalist view to something more stylized, more interesting with the Impressionists and the Fauvists like we studied this last month. But this month we're going to study Tomasso Masaccio. And Masaccio was an artist that took us from the very flattened, two-dimensional early Christian art of medieval times to the more humanist, natural-looking art. So he was kind of a forerunner to the Renaissance. He was born in 1401, so a long time ago, right? In Florence, well, just a little bit north of Florence, Italy. And because he was born so long ago, there really isn't a whole lot of information about his personal life. But we assume that he went to study at around age 12 with a master, which is what they did at that time. Young boys would go work in a workshop, apprentice, and as you got better, you were trusted with bigger things. So you'd start out like cleaning up, to be honest, like cleaning brushes, doing whatever tasks they wanted you to do. And then you'd get to, paint and take lessons as time permitted. And then you'd kind of work your way up to where you're higher up, you're doing the hands and the feet or the background people in a painting. And then you become a master where you're in charge of what's going on. You get to do the fun parts that you want to do, and then you have apprentices under you that have to take care of the parts that you don't want to take care of, which is kind of an awesome system. And it's actually a system that's pretty rare today, but it's kind of making a comeback because they're finding that putting your time in and really putting in your dues is, what makes a great artist. So kind of fun and interesting. His first signed piece of work is dated January of 1422. So we know that's kind of when he became a master and was doing his own work. And he was about 21 then, which is pretty young. I mean, 10 years of study is pretty impressive. And sadly, he didn't live to be very old, and we don't know the reason why he died. We just know that he died in the summer of 1427. So he had a very short career, but in that time, he really did a lot of remarkable things, and he's really seen as the forerunner of the Renaissance. The Renaissance artists often traveled to Florence to look at his work and study his work because he had some really interesting techniques. So as we look at this work, you'll definitely see that Renaissance feel in there, but you can still see that early Christian art feel as well. And I ordered a print with some early Christian, with a fresco from an early Christian artist, so you can kind of compare. But before now, things were definitely outlined in black, defined in black. You've got the very two-dimensional halo, flat. As you can see, his Mary here has a much more realistic face. And he did that by incorporating a lot of shading and using light sources. There's even, there's a fresco in a chapel where he shows the light source as like coming from the window, which I think is really cool. And that's something that would be cool today, but not necessarily groundbreaking. But back in the 1400s, that was definitely groundbreaking. Most people weren't showing shadows on the ground under people or under objects, or linear perspective, which we'll talk about in just a second. I'm going to show you another triptych, and you can tell like this is his earlier work. It's got that similar feel. There's no foreshortening. Everything's somewhat, there's not like, you don't feel the depth in the painting. Do you understand what I mean? So with that good realistic view, you'll kind of get this sense of three-dimension in there. You see that things are farther away. He used atmospheric perspective, which was really documented by Da Vinci. That was something that he really talked a lot about, but it wasn't very common before the Renaissance. And atmospheric perspective, if you want to talk to the kids about that, is just, if you look at things that are up close, say you go outside and you look in the street, the things that are close by, you're going to see the detail is going to be really crisp, the colors are crisp, but then look up into the mountains, and the mountains are going to be bluer and blurrier and a little bit lighter as things go back, and that's something that you see when you can see really far back. But that is how you show, that's one way to show that things are far away. Another device that he used that wasn't commonly used before then is linear perspective. And this painting is a great example of both these things, because if you look, you can see in the background, these mountains that are up close are darker, they're a little bit crisper. These ones are lighter. It helps you to realize they're in the background. And I love that this is the story of Christ paying the tax collector, you know, where he tells John to go get the coins that they need from a fish. And I love, look at his very realistic humanist view. You can see John's face is kind of puzzled, like, you want me to get the money from where? And then in the background here, we see John getting the money from the fish. And we can tell it's the background because he's smaller, which is linear perspective. And it's a little bit bluer, it's a little bit blurrier. And then actually this story has 3 stages. So the first stage right here in the middle where the tax collector comes to Christ, says, I need the money. And then John goes and gets the fish. And then here John is paying the tax collector. And he brings that forward with the use of shading, but also the shading leads your eye to the focal point of the fresco. And that focal point is Christ, right? The linear perspective is also shown in the building. So see how up close here, the building is bigger. And then as it goes towards Christ, which is the focal point, the building gets smaller. It shows, I mean, that's just linear perspective. As things get further away, you've seen like the railroad track picture that everybody does in elementary school, where the railroad tracks get closer together and go to the point. That is linear perspective. So Masaccio, just an awesome artist. Beautiful detail. And versus the more common theme, and really this isn't like the perfect example, but I'll have one for you that is a really good example, where everybody's, in the medieval art, you were shown in size according to importance. That's why baby Jesus is so ginormous. Or, you know, or he's just a chunky kid, maybe. That's fine too. Just kidding. No. They made the figures according to nature, yes, but also according to importance. So the angels are less important. They're smaller. They're here. The angels back here are smaller. But it's not showing, they're not smaller because they're further away. Do you see that? It's not like a natural setting. It's not what you would see if you just saw this set up in nature. Whereas his multi-figure portraits, his frescoes of these Bible stories are, you can see, you know, the people that are further away, you can you get that feel of depth because they're a little bit smaller. In here, I think I made a detail of this because it is documented that Masaccio put himself into this fresco. So that is him right there looking at the viewer out of this fresco. Kind of awesome, right? So, brief career. 6 years. And Michelangelo actually wrote about going to study Masaccio. So he was so influential. He really changed the way art was viewed, and I love that. And here we have one of his portraits, a good example. He loved this profile, which I say great for him because, to be honest with you, I'm not really much of a portrait artist. It's not really been a major interest to me, but I think profiles are stinking hard. It's hard. Our faces look kind of weird. Our noses are such a focal point when we do in profile, but it is fun to do, fun to try for sure. So don't tell the kids that. Tell them to just relax. Tell them we're going to show them step by step how to do it, and maybe even just do it with them. Walk through it with them while they're working. So give everybody their papers. Say, I want you to make a really soft line about where you want the edge of your face to be. Then we're going to divide it into 3 parts. All the grades. I think any age kid can do this. I walk my art students through this, and I have 5-year-olds that do this without a problem. So anybody can do it. but it is a little bit tedious. It's a little bit technical. So just tell them, don't stress out too much. This is just meant to help you. Don't let it stress you out. We want that line, that initial line, to be really, really light because we're going to erase that later. So if we make it dark, it's going to show up even after we erase. So we're going to make that line. Oh, I forgot to do one with just the line, but I'll have that for you on the art card. Make the line and then divide it with 4 little hatches into 3 spaces. And it's easiest to start in the middle with the nose and tell them, this is kind of how you draw a general face, but what makes us unique and what makes a portrait look like a person is showing all the little things that are different about a person. So I always point out to the kids because, I don't know, they like seeing ways that you're not perfect. You'll notice my nose has a funny little bump right here at the top, and it kind of goes just a little bit to the right. That's just something that's unique about me. So if I were doing a self-portrait, I would want to show my nose as being a teeny bit crooked. That's going to show that it's me. I wouldn't do a self-portrait and leave out my freckles because those are a big part of me. And just point that out to them. But again, don't stress them out. Portraits, doing figures can be so stressful because it is a little bit more restrictive. So we want to help them do it, not stress them out. If they're having a hard time with it, just say, hey, relax, we're just doing this for fun. It's no big deal. And you feel that way too. If you want to draw an example, great. If you want to do it on the whiteboard, great. But I definitely recommend working alongside of them. It just makes it easier if you're all going step by step together. So say, let's draw our line really light, and we're going to break it up. And now we're going to put our nose in the middle here. Make the nose kind of like you see. Okay, now let's go in just a little bit and out for the brow bone and up to the forehead, curve back. Okay, great. We're going to leave that and we're going to come down and go in a little bit and out for the lips and where the mouth opens up and out and then down. And then we're going to kind of go back and curve up for the chin and we'll make a neck. And they can do as big as they want. I wanted to try one big and one a little bit smaller that showed more of a bust. So the one that's kind of finished a little bit more will give you more of a bust. And definitely use the watercolor paper because it accepts the chalk so much better. It's got a little more tooth to it. And then say, if you want to, leave it black and white. But if you want to add in a little color, add in a little color with the chalk. But just remember, with chalk, we want to go really lightly, and we want to keep our marks just nice and tight because that makes it easier to blend. If we do big marks like this, we're going to have a harder time blending those together and getting rid of those lines. But if we do little tight, close together marks, then when we go to blend it, it'll just blend in so nicely. See how nicely that blends in? And it'll give you a little bit of color. And then at the end, you'll just spray it with some aerosol hairspray. I like to if you don't mind your thumb getting sticky, you can just hold it like this, just on the corner. So when I do this with my art kids, I just hold it like this. I take the aerosol can. You don't want to get it too close or it'll give you like little circles that show up. So just lightly spray it, hand it back, they're ready to go. It's really a fun, pretty easy one. Don't let the technicality of drawing faces hang you up. I know that can be a little bit intimidating, but it doesn't have to be at all. And I want you to give that same feeling to your students. Say, don't stress out about this. This isn't a big deal. We're doing this for fun. I know we always have 1 or 2 kids in the class that kind of worry about it being perfect. So you want to give them that reassurance right from the beginning. As always, let me know if you have any questions. I'm here to support you, and I'm so grateful for you guys. I hope you have great holidays and have fun with the classroom in this short month. Thanks so much.